Now, there is a question in the Talmud, who wrote these last verses after the death of Moses? So one opinion says that Yoshua, the prophet, wrote them. And another opinion says that Moses himself wrote it with tears in his eyes, meaning because he wrote about his own death.
But hermano, I believe the same Torah said that Moshe do the whole writing, and I gave it to Yoshua.
That Moses wrote the whole Torah?
Yeah.
And passed it to Yoshua, right?
If I read correctly, in the last parasha,
Oh, it says that
read that Moshe wrote
until the very end, it says, right? Yeah, that's a good point. So I'll tell you.
Yeah.
You're asking a very good question. And I'll try to explain it. It's a little bit hard to understand, but I'll try to explain it. The way the Rambam explains this disagreement in the Talmud, that Moses wrote the Torah with tears, and another opinion says the Yoshua wrote. So the Rambam actually says it like this, that either Rambam or Ramban, Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, I don't remember for sure, but one of them explains it like this, that that these two opinions in the Talmud actually do not argue. They are talking about the same thing, and here's the way he explains. He explains like this, that when Moses wrote the Torah, right, as he was writing it in the desert, right, as events happened, he was writing it, and the things that were not yet, that did not yet occur, like the future, even though he wrote it, but he would write all the letters combined, like joined, with no spaces in between. And therefore you couldn't read and understand the future. And as the events happened, he would actually put the spaces into the words, and they would match to the events of what actually happened. So does that make sense for this part? So for example, when Moses brought down the Torah, it's difficult to understand, right? What about you, Chanel? Does that make sense what I just said, or no?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
It does not.
I didn't get it.
Didn't get it. Okay, let me try again. So the question arises is like this: when Moses received the Torah, right, on Mount Sinai, and he received the whole Torah in its entirety, right? According at least to that opinion, the Ramban. Now, I'm not sure if there's maybe other people who argue with this, I'm not sure. But he received the whole entire Torah in its entirety on Mount Sinai. Now, what do you remember in the story of the Torah? 50 days later, the Jewish people created the golden calf, right? So now the question is, when the Jewish people got the Torah, did they know that they will make the golden calf? It happened later, 50 days later. Because the Torah says they created the golden calf, right? So did they know that they will create the golden calf? You see the question now?
Yeah.
So now what's the answer? What is the answer to that question? So the answer, the way he explains is like this, is that when Moses got the Torah, he received it in the following way. That everything, all the stories that happened prior to him receiving the Torah, they were written exactly how we see them right now. That the story made sense. Everything that was still the future, even though the letters were there, they could read the letters, but the spaces between the words did not exist. They were all combined. All the letters were combined. And therefore, if you tried to read it, you wouldn't know where to put the spaces in, and therefore you could read it many different ways. And therefore you don't know exactly, especially in Hebrew, since the language is, the words made up usually without like there's no vowels, right? So sometimes the words are made of two letters or three letters, and therefore when all of them are combined with no spaces, there's many different ways you can read the writing and have different interpretations and different words. So therefore there were no spaces. Now as the events happened, as the story went on, as let's say they built the golden calf, right? Let's say when they built the golden calf or the events occurred, then prophetically God would tell Moses where to put the spaces in among the letters, and he would put the spaces in prophetically, and then the story of the Torah would match the events that actually happened. Okay, does that part make sense so far? Okay.
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Oh, that's very
Now, let me finish. Now, as they came to the end of the Torah, when Moses passed away, the way he explains is that up until Moses passed away, he put in the spaces. But after Moses' passing, even though Moses wrote the letters until the end of the Torah, he did not fill in the spaces. He did not fill in the spaces of the words. And therefore, he did not know exactly what's going to happen after his death. Not necessarily. Now, Joshua, the son of Nun, after Moses has passed away, prophetically, God revealed to him where to put the spaces in. And he put in the spaces, and again, the story matched with the events. So the Ramban says, when the two opinions in the Talmud says, one of them says that Yoshua wrote it, and the other one says that Moses wrote with tears, the Ramban says that the word tears is actually a mistranslation. The Talmud uses the word dema. In Hebrew, the word dema, it could mean tears, and that's why usually that's how people used to translate the Talmud, that it means Moses wrote with tears. But the Ramban says no. In this word, the word dema in Aramaic actually means combined or joined, meaning Moses wrote the Torah, the rest of the verses combined after his death, and Yoshua wrote it, meaning he just put the spaces in. So that's the explanation of the Ramban of who wrote the last verses of the Torah. Does that make sense now?
wow. That's really good. Yeah.
It's deep. It took a while for me. That's why I kind of before you asked that question, I avoided explaining, but I didn't want to confuse you guys. But as soon as you asked, I felt like we need to explain this part.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
So God actually revealed
So,
certain things to Moses, but actually complete the revelation with Joshua.
Right. He revealed to Joshua where to put the spaces in between the words.
Right. I wonder why didn't God just tell Moses? Because God already told Moses what to write.
Why just God didn't tell Moses to write about his own death, the future, right?
Yeah.
I'll tell you.
Why didn't God just tell?
I'll tell you why.
Yeah, just say it all.
I'll tell you why. That's actually a very good question. I thought about it, and actually, there is a rabbi asks that question, and I think the way I understand it is like this, because the Torah is the truth, right? The Torah cannot be anything other than the truth. So if Moses would write in the Torah like this, and Moses died in this place, and nobody in Israel arose like Moses until this day, and there was no other prophet, that would imply that the Torah is not true, because at that time this was not yet true. Moses didn't die yet. So if Moses would write in the Torah, put the spaces in that how Moses died, it would mean at that time the Torah was not true. And that cannot be. Do you see?
But if he tells how he died, where he died, and stuff like that,
Right.
and it actually happened,
But the thing is,
then that is the truth.
when the Torah is going to use the past term, the past sense, right? It says, and Moses died there. The word died means in the past. And if that did not happen yet, that would mean that there's a word in the Torah that is not true.
But it will happen.
It will, but it didn't yet, right? So at that time, when Moses was writing it and he wrote it, let's see, he wrote the word and Moses died there. Is that true or not at that time? It's not true. Only it's okay, we can hear you. Chanel, we can hear you. Do you see what I'm saying? At that time when Moses wrote and Moses died there, as soon as he wrote it, but he didn't actually die, that would mean that the Torah at that time is not true. It only became true after he died, but at that time it wasn't true. You see? And therefore, the only way to do this was to not reveal the future yet in the Torah, not to have the spaces into the correct places. Why? Because the events did not yet happen. After the events happened, then that's when the spaces were allowed to be put in place, so that the Torah is always true. Hermano, does that make sense to you?
Oh,
It does?
yeah.
Okay. That was intense. This explanation. But yeah.
Yeah. I could see your face.
You could see, yeah.